This is all the books I read in 6 months, so let's recap. So I have an abominable TBR, way too many books for any one person to read. So I have banned myself from buying more books till I read all of my TBR, which has resulted in me reading 12 books over 6 months, which, even though I know Book Talk girlies and all these avid readers can read like 30 books in a month, this is good for me. This is a good number for me. So I'm gonna rate them for you guys and let you know if I think you should read them. So first, I was really on a classic kick. I was trying to read a bunch of classics that I missed in school. So I have Wuthering Heights by Emily Bront. This is a great book. However, I was extremely misled coming into this. Somebody told me that this was a romance book. There's a bunch of haunting the narrative, like he couldn't get over her kind of stuff, which is true in a sense, but this is not a romance book at all. This is a revenge book with like just a passionate anger, and there's really not like romance. It's more like generational revenge. My guy Heathcliff, he's insane. It's also about like manic episodes. There are a lot of manic episodes in this. It is really good. It definitely goes on topics of like abused turning into the abusers. I would rate it like a 4 out of 5 just because I was so misled coming into this that I didn't understand it at first. I didn't really read the class differences and what this book is actually about till much late into the book. Too late into the book where I feel like I should probably reread this in a couple years just to fully get the actual understanding of it. So please don't be misled by like the new movie or what anyone tells you saying that this is a romance book, because it is not. This is not a romance. This is a revenge plot. The whole thing is revenge. It is very good. But wow, is Heathcliff the biggest hater I've ever known. The biggest hater I've ever known. It's crazy. Next, I read Frankenstein. As I said, I have been on that classical kick. This book is absolutely beautiful. You can see like there's alchemy and science stuff all throughout the sides of it, and there's beautiful writing or drawings. And throughout the book, there is a bunch of actual drawings in it, which are very pretty. This is probably the most beautiful book I do own. Also probably the most performative, not the most performative book I own, but it is very good. I rate this one 5 out of 5, dude. It was beautiful. It was great. I loved it so much. It was all about like the need for human connection and abandonment and being rejected by society. A lot about like how people's differences kind of cause this prejudice. For Frankenstein, it was a lot about how he looked, how he spoke, how he thought. A lot of it was just he was immediately like scorned as like a monster. And this is not a horror either, really. Even though a lot of people talk about it as a horror, I've seen some people like not like Frankenstein because they think, oh, I was looking for it to be scary. And it's really not scary. It's really about like being monstrositized, like being kicked off to the side because you look, act, or talk a certain way. It's more about like society seeing things as monsters when they aren't. Which I think this book, surprisingly, has prevailed in the point, in the topic, has prevailed for so long. Like, this was written, I think, in like This was written around, I think, 1820s. And the prejudice that people have, like for other people's differences has prevailed to 2026. So, you know, this book is still very relevant over 2,000 years. Or, that was wrong, over 200 years. Over 200 years, this book still prevails on the topics, and it's very good. I would highly recommend it to people, and if you're scared of horror, don't worry, it's not scary. It is beautiful writing as well. I will say it is a bit hard to read. Took me a while to read it just because of how old the language is, I guess is a good way to say it. Very old language, kind of hard to read. Some of the descriptors don't make sense to me because I've never heard these words used before. But really good overall. Next is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I think there's a lot of opinions on this one. I would rate this like a 2.5 to a 3 out of 5. Like, it's kind of rough to read. It's very slice of life, very simple. Not much really goes on, even though it is like a time travel book. I was really interested in the back. The back of it sounds great. It sounds so interesting, but in reality, like what people are doing in here are just like, it's just not very interesting. It also kind of is a little poorly translated, it seems. Like the paragraphs kind of don't make sense sometimes. Like it really seems like the first part of the paragraph should be at the end and the end part should be at the front, but they have it swapped, and I was wondering if maybe like the translator didn't get enough like good to go to, you know, make that much of a change, because it seems a little confusing to me, at least. I've seen some other people say that it was translated great, but to me it was just a little confusing, or sentences just seemed a little off, which kind of made it more difficult to read because I just didn't enjoy reading something that seemed like kind of a bit elementary. Though I do understand that it's a translated book, so there's always the case that with a translated book that it might not be, you know, perfect English writing, obviously. I will say probably the biggest gripe I had with it is that the writing sometimes with what these characters would do, it made me cringe so bad. It was so hard to like get past some of them because it was like, dude, this is like, it feels like I'm back in 2016 reading like fanfic. And somebody would say like, I'm just so petite and tiny, and there's nothing that I can really do about that, and I'm blonde with long hair. You know, like that's what that's kind of the vibe it gave off. Sometimes some of those lines, they were supposed to be hard hitters, and I was like, but it's a very short book, so it's easy to try. But I didn't really like it that much, unfortunately. Next, we have a banger. I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. Oh my god, is this book so good. This is a 5 out of 5 book. I think everyone should read this. It is painful. It hurts, but it's beautiful, and it's genuinely just like one of my favorite books now. My favorite nonfiction book, I would say. It is a memoir. It is so beautiful. Really made me hurt, made my stomach churn. I had to put it down sometimes because of how painful, or I guess how some of the scenes laid out, that I just had to put it down and be like, oh, I gotta take a break because it's making me too uncomfortable. But in a good way. Like, it was done so well. She has such a blunt writing, but it's so beautiful, and it really is so easy to read. I read this like in a couple days. I loved it so much. Everyone should read this. Do be aware that it does have a lot of really hard topics to go over with like child abuse and underage relationships, including like being coerced sexually. So there is a lot of like heavy topics in this book, but it is really good and very, very well done. This is like her life story, so I would highly recommend it. Okay, this next one is not going to be new to anybody. It is The Hunger Games.
Mom! Reaping! Going now!
I am just really late on this. I have never read The Hunger Games until this year, which I am 19, so it's not too late. I should have definitely read this at like 12, but I think now that I'm older, a lot of people I've heard will go back to The Hunger Games when they're older to read it again, because there are some things that kind of go over a kid's head, which I do think it's good that I read this later in life due to that. But oh my god, is this a good book? This is like a 4.5 out of 5. I loved this so much. I will say there are times where I'm like, oh yeah, this is definitely kind of meant for a bit of a younger audience, but I want to read the next ones. Like, it is so good. I really enjoyed it. It dealt with heavy topics really well for like a younger, like teen audience. It was a very fast and digestible read, super easy to read. I read it in only a couple of days. I would definitely recommend it if you haven't read it, but I assume most people have already read The Hunger Games, and anything I say about it has already been said. I also read If You Tell by Greg Olson. This book is good. I would give it like a 4 out of 5. It's very well written. It is a true story retelling of murders and child abuse. It is very hard to read, I will say, just because of the topics that it goes over. It had me kind of like very grossed out a lot. I really was uncomfortable reading it. I think for somebody who likes true crime, especially like getting into the nitty-gritty of the details, would love this book. I think I'm just not at that point in my life right now where I'm like super into that, especially with how kind of detailed it was and how it did go over the children's POVs a lot too. So I really think it is a good book, very well written. I did read it very quickly, had me super engaged, but it is very uncomfortable. So be warned that it is kind of grotesque in a way. Another nonfiction that I read is Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. This is a great book. I loved this so much. This is a 5 out of 5 book. This is a perfect book to get into nonfiction. It's super easy to read, and it goes over the story of John Green meeting this tuberculosis patient and going over kind of a bit of the tuberculosis patient's story and John Green's story on learning about tuberculosis and engaging with the topic more often and learning about these things. It did really go over how tuberculosis affected society, and more importantly, how society affected tuberculosis. It really made me feel frustrated with the medical system, because a lot of it is about injustice and how tuberculosis is completely curable, yet it still kills the most amount of people per year, every year. I highly recommend this book. Great book, well written, and very short, very easy to read. If you're trying to get into nonfiction, this is a great book to start. I also read Where'd You Go, Bernadette by Maria Semple. This book was okay. I give it like a 3.5 out of 5. It had me very interested. I went through it pretty quickly, but you can tell it was written a while ago. You could tell, I think it was written in like 2012. And you could tell by the humor that it's supposed to have, like the comedy. It's just really not something that I find funny, if that makes sense. Like, it's really just not that funny to me. A lot of it was about, like, a lot of her humor is like, wow, I hate Seattle people and I hate Canadians. That was, like, a lot of Bernadette's jokes was just hating nice people, because that's what she said all the time, is that Seattle people were so nice that they were almost as nice as Canadians, and she hated Canadians. So it's very interesting. A lot of this book kind of just feels like somebody complaining about nothing. Really, all of her struggles kind of felt very shallow. Like, the whole time it was just like, me, 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 me. And I was like, dude, you have, like, you left your kid for no, like, very little reason, almost, it kind of felt like. And it's not to downplay her clear mental break that she has at some point in this, but, like, it's kind of crazy how far she goes over such a selfish thing. Really all because she had, like, one blunder 10 years ago, and that blunder had her lost forever and ever and ever. I do think there was a lot of miscommunication in this book, like a lot, like a ton, to the point where if you do not like the miscommunication trope, it is very, very, very frustrating. It was kind of frustrating to me, because the whole book was like a miscommunication. That was like the whole thing. And it was just hard to read because I would just be like, oh, I don't like this. I don't really like it. I will say a really good thing about the book, really enjoyed how the whole book is supposed to be like a collection of the daughter's writings. The daughter wrote, put together all of the emails and everything into this nice book, which I enjoyed, and I do like how it goes back and forth with like emails and letters and then real life conversations to kind of try and piece together where did Bernadette go. I enjoy the overall story. I think it's nice. I think it's very unique. Very unique, but frustrating in the end, unfortunately. Okay, so this next book is a book that I got from a thrift store a while ago, like years ago. Thought I would enjoy it, and now I'm finally reading it. And girl, it's rough. So this is An Author Bites the Dust. It's a very short book, but it is very hard to read. It was written in the 40s, and you can tell. There's a few comments in there, not many, though, surprisingly. There's only a few comments in there that make me really go, wow, this was written in the 40s. But I really didn't like the main character at all. He was kind of really annoying, especially because, like, the whole time he was like, yeah, I took all my PTO to go here on this case instead of going on vacation with my wife, so my wife's mad at me. And it's like, yeah, obviously your wife's mad at you. You just abandoned her at home and then go flirt with other girls on this case the whole time. Pisses me off. It was interesting enough to just barely keep me into it. However, I really didn't like the end where they just explained everything. Like, they just had like a monologue at the end with the character who ended up, doing it all, just explaining everything and the reasons why and all this stuff. Like, you caught me. I guess I'll tell you my whole story now. And what frustrated me even more is that all of these reasons why she did some of these things never ever foreshadowed in the book. Like, I would have liked to see cases where you could see that she was like hit by her husband, or that her husband was violent at all, because we don't see that at all. And we get like no clues of any of this because he wants it to be like a secret, but he's bad at foreshadowing. And so he just doesn't say it till the very end with that big monologue. And it kind of felt really stupid. In a way, it kind of felt like Scooby-Doo, if it wasn't for you milling kids. Okay, the next book that I read was The Song of Achilles. This was a banger. This was a banger. This, I would say, is like a 4.5 out of 5. I love... Hold on. This was like a 4.5 out of 5. I loved it so much. It was such a quick and fast read. Even though it is kind of like, not necessarily a longer book, but I guess longer than what I would assume is like a quick book. But it flew by. The writing was beautiful. I really enjoyed it. She clearly knows a lot about Greek history and about like Greek mythology. I would say the last 100 pages of this book were absolute pure gold. They were beautiful. There were so many lines that I actually highlighted, which is like, I was highlighting shit, and that's not me. I don't highlight, I don't annotate, because I just read, and then I really don't. But this book made me annotate. I was like, gosh, I have to highlight this. It's so good. It's so good. I will say my only gripe why I took that 0.5 star off is because some of the characters, the main two characters, Patroclus and Achilles, really don't get a lot of character development. They're kind of shallow as characters. It's more about like their story. And their story, perfect, beautiful, well done. But the characters are a bit shallow, to the point where I get angry at Patroclus so often because he would just let Achilles do whatever and then never get mad at him. Achilles could have like killed his mom and he would have just been like, okay, I just love him so much that I can't say anything to him. Made me angry for like 2 seconds, but I never said anything. That makes me angry. And he only gets like the courage to do something once in this book, but he doesn't even get it that well. He doesn't even, it's just, because if Achilles did some of the things that he did to Patroclus to me, girl, that's not happening. I'm gonna yell at you. You're not gonna, no. And Patroclus just goes, that's okay. No, stupid. But even with that, it was such a good book that I can't even, like, I can look past that completely because it was so good. I loved it so much. I recommend this to everybody who loves Greek retellings or Greek mythology. Even if you don't like Greek mythology, it's not very hard to get into. It really gives you like a good standpoint to come from zero Greek mythology. Like, I really don't know a lot of it. I know Achilles' names. I don't know that Patroclus existed. But after reading this, beautiful. I'm gonna read Circe from her because it was so good. So this is the last book I read within June. This is a bit rough, I will say. I got this in a 2022 book of the month and have not read it. So 4 years later, here I am reading it. This book was very, very fast. I really flew through it, read it only in a couple days. Very easy to read, very like almost, I wouldn't say simple writing, but very digestible writing. I did have quite a few gripes with this. I would rate it like a 3 out of 5. The characters I did not care for, and did not care about. Anytime anything happened to them, I was like, well, does it really matter? Because I really don't care. Which is kind of rude because they have a lot going on. There was some like reality TV level drama in this book, and I will say I was eating it up. I was eating it up so hard. Which is kind of, I'm like looking back and I'm like, was it really that good? But I loved it. For those like 50 pages that it was happening, I was eating up. I think this book could have been really good, because they had a lot of good ideas with plot twists and with these shock factor things. However, they had so many in here that none of them got fleshed out by the time the book was over. Like, if every single character has a plot twist, obviously they're going to be half-assed. And unfortunately, all of them were half-assed. There was no, like, real plot twist that I felt. I guessed most of them from the beginning, and they just, like, weren't fully fleshed because of, it's a short book. It's not very long, and if you have 7 different plot twists going on, they just kind of all fall short. I really wish that the author just, like, focused on one, or 2, you know, kept it a bit more simple, but really went into those. I think it would have been so much better and a well-taken story if it was like that. It is a very good, like, tropical beach novel. I enjoyed reading it in the summer. Right now I'm reading a book that's, like, set in the winter, and it's kind of confusing because I'm like, I don't feel it. I don't feel it because it's July. I'm not feeling it, but I'm gonna continue reading it. Overall, this book was just alright. A bit of a disappointment, but I could definitely see how a lot of people would really enjoy this book, because there are parts that I really enjoyed. I just think it fell a little flat on me, unfortunately. Okay, I do have one bonus book. Where the Crawdads Sing. Now, I did not finish this in June. I finished this on July 3rd. So very close, very, very close. However, not in June, but I'm including it anyway because I finished it. This book was really good. I would say like a 4.5 out of 5. I've never had a book get so recognized in public when I was reading it. I had multiple people come up to me and say, that's such a good book, you'll love it. And I did love it. However, I will say there was a part in the book, probably like 50 pages, that I really hated. And it was whenever she was 14 and dating an 18-year-old. That age gap was non-acceptable to me, and I know that there are a lot of people that are like, it's in the 50s, that's just what happened. But if you literally age him, she turns 15 in their relationship, if you age him down to 17, just 1 year, it could have been so much more comfortable for probably a lot of readers, but it was very uncomfortable for me, and it kind of made me really grossed out, and I didn't like the scenes with him and her. Made me uncomfortable. I do appreciate that it was like kind of like a first love thing. He was super nice to her, so it's really had my heart like torn in 2 sides, because I'm like, this is disgusting, but also like he's teaching her to read and all these things. Like, if he was just aged down or if she was aged up, it would have made it like so much better that I would have been on board for the whole thing, but they kept the age gap in there for what reason? I don't know. It doesn't really prove much of a point in there, besides that it's gross. However, even with the age gap, the rest of this book was amazing. It was so well written. It describes the nature beautifully and really made me feel like, damn, I need to go out there and connect with nature. I need to go into a marsh and get lost in there, because it sounds beautiful. Like, her connection with the birds and the shells and the ocean is just like, honestly, it's inspiring. It felt very, very immersive. I was locked in at every corner wanting to know what happened. I really enjoyed the pacing in the book as well. It kind of went over 2 different time periods, one of her growing up from being like 6 up until she's in her mid-20s, and then the other POV is when the murder happens, because this is a murder mystery, and going through the murder. And I will say the way that it's paced is perfect. They go from like her being 6 up and up, but slightly introducing like little murder pieces in there, being like, oh, the body was discovered, the sheriffs went into town and heard these rumors about her, and then it'll like swap back to her POV of her being young, and you start to see where the rumors start to align with like her life, and how it plays out. It's really good. I think the pacing, beautiful, great. I loved it. Her life is so interesting, and it also kind of fits a lot with Frankenstein in a way, because this book was also heavily about a need for connection, and she found her connection in nature. She was kind of a very lonely person, and it's kind of the same thing with Frankenstein, where he had a big need for connection with people. He wanted a family, and this is also a big book about found family, and it made me cry at a point because I was, beautiful. I loved some of it so much. I wanted to highlight parts in this book as well. It is just so engaging and beautiful. So I really do recommend this book. It was great. As you can know, this book is highly recommended by like everybody. So that is all the books I read this year, or so far this year. Hopefully I finish my whole TBR because it is huge. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe if you'd like. Yeah, see you guys later.